It was a cold night. The old radiator in Chris Lawson's house was making strange noises, like it was sick or dying. Chris got up from the couch and turned the heat dial to full for the third time that night. But the snowstorm outside didn't care. His living room still felt like a freezer. "Working from home is great," they said, Chris mumbled, wrapping another blanket around his shoulders. "No commute, no problem," they said. He looked at his laptop. He had been trying to fix a piece of code for hours, but nothing was working. And trying to fix it while freezing was even harder. Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. Boom! Like something big had crashed. Chris jumped up in shock. His laptop slid off his lap and fell on the couch. "What the hell was that?" he whispered, walking quickly to the window. He wiped the frost off the glass and looked out, but he couldn't see anything. Just darkness and snow flying everywhere. Then the lights in the house flickered once, twice, but luckily stayed on. And then another sound. This time it was pounding on the front door. Thump, thump, thump. Chris stood still for a moment. Who could be outside in this kind of weather? The news had told everyone to stay indoors. No one should be out during this blizzard. The pounding got louder. "I'm coming," Chris shouted, throwing the blanket aside and rushing to the door. Maybe it was a neighbor who lost power, or someone who had an accident nearby. He opened the door and froze. It wasn't a normal person standing there. It was a woman, but not like any woman he had ever seen. Her skin was purple, not pale or bruised, but truly purple. Her hair was silver, and her eyes glowed gold with thin vertical pupil, like a cat or a snake. Chris took a step back. "Wah! What the hell?" The strange woman looked like she was freezing. Her body was shaking hard, and she was wearing only a thin metallic bodysuit. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie, and it did not look warm at all. "She cold," she said with chattering teeth. "Help!" Chris felt every instinct telling him to shut the door. But there was something in her eyes, something desperate. She wasn't just strange, she was scared, she was suffering. He moved aside and said, "Come inside." She stumbled into the house and fell to her knees. Chris closed the door quickly, behind her to keep the cold out. "Human," she said in a deep voice, still shaking hard. "I'm freezing. We must warm up." "In your sleeping cocoon," Chris blinked. "My what?" She looked around, then pointed down the hallway. "Your bed. Now." "Whoa, slow down," Chris said, raising his hands. "Let me get you a blanket first, or make you some tea, maybe." "No." "Time," she growled, her voice full of urgency. "Only body heat can save me." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her hand was ice cold, but her grip was strong, like iron. Chris tried to pull away. "Lady Kara," she said firmly. "Elite warrior of the Talari 9th Squadron. And I will die here. Without proper heat transfer." She was clearly in pain. Her whole body was shaking. Her lips were turning blue, and her skin was losing color. Chris didn't understand who or what she really was, but she needed help. "Fast, all right," he said finally. "Fine, let's go to the bedroom, but no funny stuff, and I'm keeping my clothes on." She didn't argue. She just followed him. When they reached his room, her eyes locked on his bed. "Primitive," she said, "but it will work." Before he could say anything, she began taking off her bodysuit. "Whoa!" Chris turned away quickly. "What are you doing?" "Removing barrier. Skin-to-skin contact is required," she said calmly. Chris covered his eyes. "That's not how we do things here on Earth." "Your customs are irrelevant to my survival," she said sharply. Chris heard the sound of her suit hitting the floor. Then the bed creaked. "Remove your coverings and join me," she said. Chris peeked over his shoulder. She was under the blanket. Now, but he could still see her bare purple shoulders. "Look," he said nervously, "on Earth, getting into bed naked together usually means something romantic." Kara narrowed her eyes. "That is inefficient. On Talari, survival comes first. We don't care about taboos." Chris sighed and walked to the bed. "Fine, but I'm staying dressed." She hissed in frustration but didn't stop. Him. Chris slowly got under the covers, keeping some distance, but Kara moved closer right away, her freezing skin pressing against him. Chris shivered at the touch. "Jesus, you really are cold." "Told you," she whispered. Chris heard the sound of her suit hitting the floor, Then the bed creaked. "Remove your coverings and join me," she said. Chris peeked over his shoulder. She was under the blanket now, but he could still see her bare purple shoulders. "Look," he said nervously. "On Earth, getting into bed. Naked together usually means something romantic." Kara narrowed her eyes. "That is inefficient. On Talari, survival comes first. We don't care about taboos." Chris sighed and walked to the bed. "Fine, but I'm staying dressed," she hissed in frustration, but didn't stop him. Chris slowly got under the covers, keeping some distance. But Kara moved closer right away, her freezing skin pressing against him. Chris shivered at the touch. "Jesus, you really are cold." "Told you," she whispered. Slowly, her shaking began to stop. Her breathing became steady. "Your body heat is acceptable," she said softly. "Gee, thanks," Chris replied, trying to relax. But his mind was racing. Who was she really? Why was she here? And what had just walked into his life? Chris opened his eyes to loud noises. It wasn't the wind, or the radiator this time. It was something else. He sat up quickly and noticed Kara wasn't in bed. The blanket on her side was empty. "Kara?" he called out, worried now. He got out of bed and hurried into the living room. What he saw made him freeze in place. Kara was standing by the window, still wrapped in the comforter, her body tense like a soldier ready to fight. Her golden eyes were wide and focused on the outside, and her finger pointed straight at the window. "It's attacking again," she growled. Chris blinked, still half asleep. "What is?" She turned her head slightly toward him. "The cold white particles. They are back, and more aggressive this time." Chris walked up to the window and looked out. He almost laughed. "It's just snow," he said. "Remember frozen water?" Kara narrowed her glowing eyes. "It multiplied overnight. The ground is completely buried." Chris nodded. "Yeah, that happens sometimes. Welcome to winter in New England." Kara stepped a little closer to the glass, eyeing the world outside like it was an enemy zone. Everything was covered in white. The snow had settled deep, at least 2 feet high. Trees looked like sugar sculptures, and the cars outside were nearly invisible under the snow blanket. "Your planet is even more dangerous than I thought," she muttered. Chris chuckled. "This isn't dangerous. It's just winter. It'll melt in a few weeks." Kara didn't look convinced. "It falls from the sky like frozen knives, covers everything, blocks movement. That is a threat where I come from." Chris looked at her again. In daylight, she looked even more unreal. Her skin wasn't just purple. It shimmered slightly, like soft metal under sunlight. Her silver hair hung loosely down her back, and her eyes, glowing gold slits, watched everything with a soldier's alertness. "You're staring," she said without looking at him. Chris cleared his throat and turned away. "Sorry, it's just not every day I find a purple alien warrior in my living room." "You should be honored by my presence," she said, proud as ever. Chris smirked. "Oh yeah, super honored. You broke into my house, hijacked my bed, and now you're hiding from snowflakes." Kara raised one perfect eyebrow. "Would you prefer I died on your doorstep?" Chris raised his hands in surrender. No, I'm glad you didn't. This is a lot to take in." He walked into the kitchen. "Are you hungry? Do you eat human food?" Kara followed him like a curious cat, still wrapped in the big blanket. "I consume organic matter. Show me your provisions." Chris opened the fridge. Kara bent down to look inside, inspecting every item like it might be dangerous. "Primitive cooling system," she commented. "Says the alien who almost froze to death from a snowstorm," Chris replied. Kara gave him a sharp look. "Mock me. Again human. And I will demonstrate combat techniques your species cannot counter." Chris laughed. Okay, no mocking. Let's just get you breakfast." He cracked some eggs and made toast while she sniffed the food like a scientist. When it was ready, she picked up the fork, stared at it, then slowly began to eat. "This is acceptable," she said after tasting the eggs. Then she ate the rest quickly, like she hadn't eaten in days. She noticed the mug in his hand. "That liquid. It releases steam." "What is it?" "Coffee," Chris said. "Want to try some?" She took his mug without asking, and took a sip. The reaction was instant. She spit it out back into the sink. "Poison," she gasped. Chris laughed again. "It's an acquired taste." "Do not offer me poisons again," she said with a frown, wiping her lips. Chris smiled, amused. All right, no coffee for aliens, got it? Kara sat down at the kitchen table. Your house, what is its thermal defense system? You mean heating? Chris asked. It's just old radiators and a busted thermostat. Inferior, she replied. On Talari, our homes regulate perfect temperature with thermal crystals. Well, welcome to Earth. We do what we can. Chris leaned against the counter. So, how long do you plan on staying here? Kara's face changed. She looked serious now. You want me to leave? Chris quickly replied. I didn't mean that. It's just, my house is small. I don't exactly have an alien guest room. She nodded slowly. I have nowhere else. My ship is broken. Talari does not rescue exiles, especially those who refuse orders. Chris stared at her. Wait, you were exiled? Why? Kara looked away. I disobeyed my counsel. I was supposed to marry for political reasons. I refused. They sent me away. Chris blinked. You got kicked off your planet for not agreeing to an arranged marriage? Yes, she said simply. On Talari, order is more important than choice. Chris sat beside her now, slowly taking it all in. She wasn't just an alien, she was a soldier, a rebel, a survivor, and now she was his problem. But for some strange reason, that didn't scare him. It interested him. Over the next few days, life got weird, and for Chris that was saying something, because sharing your bed with a purple alien warrior was already pretty high on the weird scale. Every morning, Kara would wake up before him, already alert and watching the window, like an enemy might appear from the snow at any second. She didn't trust the weather. She didn't trust the radiator. And she definitely didn't trust his toaster. This small machine throws fire at my food, she said one morning, glaring at it like it had insulted her. Why do you not just hold the bread over a controlled flame? Because we're not cavemen, Chris said with a smirk. She gave him a look that said she might throw the toaster out the window. Chris had started to adjust, though. He bought extra blankets. He set up a small space heater near the couch where Kara liked to sit, though she still called it the warming box. Every few hours, she'd demand proximity. I require heat, she'd say, holding out her hand. At first, Chris tried to resist. I'm working, he'd protest. I'm coding. I have meetings. You will code better if I am not frozen solid, she'd reply, already walking toward him. Eventually, Chris gave up arguing. He'd sit with her on the couch, and she'd press her cold body against him, soaking up his warmth like a living space heater sponge. This is survival, she always reminded him, like she was trying to make sure he didn't get the wrong idea. But Chris was definitely starting to get some ideas. He didn't want to admit it out loud, but he couldn't stop noticing things, like how her laugh, which was rare, sounded like warm wind through glass, or how the way her eyes narrowed when she was thinking reminded him of a cat ready to pounce. Even the way she folded his clothes with military precision made him smile. She was strange, bossy, always cold, but she was also smart, brave, and honestly, kind of beautiful in her own wild way. One afternoon, the snowstorm finally calmed down. The sun came out and Chris suggested she go outside just for a minute and feel what Earth was like beyond the four walls. Kara looked at him like he was asking her to walk into fire. I do not trust this snow, she said. It's just frozen water, Chris reminded her, pulling out a thick coat, gloves, scarf, and winter boots. Bundle up, you'll be fine. So after 20 minutes of struggling into the layers, the boots were too big and she hated the tight jeans. She was finally ready. She looked like a purple marshmallow with a silver wig. This is humiliating, she said. You look great. Chris lied. Now come on. He opened the door and Kara took one step outside. The cold air hit her face like a slap. She hissed. It burns. It doesn't burn, Chris laughed. It's just wind. This is weaponized weather, she said seriously. They stepped out together and Kara instantly froze when her foot touched the snow. What is this? She yelled, jumping back. It's just snow. Chris laughed, tears in his eyes from laughing too hard. It's soft. It doesn't bite. It tried to consume my leg. Chris knelt down and scooped up some snow. Look, it's just water. Here. She slapped the snow out of his hand before he could hand it to her. You cannot be serious, she said. Your species chose to live here. We like variety, he said, brushing snow off his jacket. Besides, it gets warm in summer. What is warm for your people? She asked suspiciously. Maybe 30 degrees Celsius. Kara's jaw dropped. That is what we call winter on Talari. Chris laughed again. Yeah, you're going to hate summer here. After 5 minutes outside, Kara gave up. Back inside now. Back inside, she immediately threw off all the winter layers and stood in front of the heater like it was her god. Chris helped her get the zipper on her coat unstuck, and their hands touched, just for a second, but it was enough to make both of them pause. You're warmer now, she said softly, looking into his eyes. So are you, Chris replied, just as quietly. They stood there, close, the sound of the heater humming in the background. The moment stretched, silent and uncertain. Then Kara tilted her head and said, Your pupils get larger when you look at me. Chris blinked. What? It's a sign of attraction in many species, she said matter-of-factly. Talari males react the same way. Chris rubbed the back of his neck. I guess, yeah. I do find you attractive. Kara looked curious. Is that why your body gets warmer when I touch you? Chris's face turned red. Okay, time to change the subject. Kara stepped closer, her voice softer now. I don't mind. If you find me appealing. Chris swallowed. You're not just appealing. You're amazing. She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Then perhaps this heat-sharing arrangement is not just about survival. Chris's heart was beating fast now. Maybe not. Kara placed her hand gently on his chest. Then let's see where this alliance takes us. 3 days later, things took a serious turn. Chris was in the kitchen making coffee when he noticed Kara suddenly freeze. She was sitting near the window, but now her whole body had gone still, like a statue. What's wrong? He asked, walking toward her. They're here, she said in a low voice, her eyes staring out the window. Who's here? Chris asked, feeling a tight knot form in his stomach. The Talari investigators, she whispered. I can sense their ship. They've entered Earth's orbit. They're looking for me. Chris moved to the window, but he couldn't see anything. Just trees, snow, and the cloudy sky. You're sure? He asked. I know their energy signature, she said. They've tracked my emergency signal. They will scan the area and come down soon. Chris stared at her. What happens if they find you? Kara didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, They'll take me back. Best case. I'll be reconditioned. My memories erased, my will broken. Worst case. I'll be executed for dishonoring the council. Chris couldn't believe what he was hearing. Executed? Just because you didn't want to get married to someone? Kara nodded. Talari society does not forgive disobedience, and me staying with a human? That will be seen as corruption. Chris's heart was racing. We're not letting them take you. Kara turned to him. Then we must act now. Talari scanners detect lone individuals, but bonded pairs and couples give off a different energy signal. It causes confusion in the scan. Chris blinked. So, we need to pretend to be a couple? Not just pretend, she said. We must act like we are truly bonded, married, living together, emotionally connected. Chris stared at her. That's a big jump from sharing blankets. Kara stepped closer. I know. But if we don't do this, I die. Those words hit Chris like a punch in the chest. Over the past days, he had grown attached to her, not just as someone to protect, but someone he genuinely cared about. He didn't want to imagine a world where she was gone. He took a deep breath. Okay. Let's do it. Tell me what we need. To do. Kara looked relieved for the first time in hours. We must prepare the house to look like we live together. We must sleep in the same bed, no space between us. We must touch often, act close. And when the investigators come, we must kiss. Chris's eyes widened. Wait, a kiss? It's part of bonding rituals, Kara said seriously. If we do not show signs of physical affection, they will know we're faking it. Chris looked at her face, so calm, so focused, so determined. He sighed. All right, Let's start practicing. The next few hours were spent turning the house into their home. Kara moved her things, what little she had, into the bedroom. Chris removed anything that might seem single. He added a second toothbrush in the bathroom. They lit candles, set photos. He quickly edited some selfies of them, and even made a romantic dinner scene on the table. That evening, Kara came out wearing one of Chris's hoodies. She looked different, softer, less like a soldier, more like someone human. Chris felt his chest tighten. This wasn't fake for him anymore. He was in too deep. Suddenly, a knock on the door. Chris looked at Kara. She gave a small nod. He opened the door slowly. 3 tall figures stood outside. All had glowing golden eyes, sharp features and skin shades darker than Kara's. They wore sleek black suits that looked more like armor. "Christopher Lawson?" one of them asked in a robotic voice. "Yes," Chris replied, trying not to. "Sound nervous. We are from the Talari Diplomatic Corps. We request entry." Chris stepped aside. "Come in." They walked in like shadows, smooth and silent. Their eyes locked on Kara immediately. "Kara of the 9th Squadron," one said. "You are accused of desertion." "I am not Kara of the 9th Squadron anymore," she said calmly. "I am now Kara Lawson, married to this human, doing cultural research." "Show us proof of your bond," the leader said. Chris froze for a second, but Kara didn't. She stepped forward, pulled Chris close, and kissed him. It wasn't a short kiss. It was warm, slow, and full of something more. When they pulled back, even the investigators looked surprised. One scanned them with a small device. "Their energy patterns are consistent with bonded pairs." "Another," one asked. "Why did your ship send a distress signal?" "Crash during research," Kara said smoothly. "Minor malfunction." After several minutes of cold questioning, the investigators finally stood. "We will report your death in the crash," the leader said. "It will satisfy the council, but you may never return." "I understand," Kara said. They left without another word. As the door shut, Chris let out a long breath. Kara turned to him, her eyes a mix of sadness and peace. "I am officially dead now," she said. "Maybe," Chris replied softly, "but now you can really live." She looked at him with new warmth. "So can we." Chris smiled, pulling her into a hug. She leaned into him, no longer just for warmth, but because she wanted to. And for the first time in a long time, in the middle of snow, silence, and strange beginnings, Chris felt completely at home.